father is a clergyman in Holland. In our family, there has always been one who preached the gospel. It is my fervent desire that the spirit of my father and grandfather may rest upon me.
This is he, Vincent van Gogh, 18 now, but soon at 23, desperate to be a preacher. He does not know it, he cannot know it, but upon reaching that decision, he will have left only 15 years of life wherein to shape a totally different career. His story best begins when as a boy he wandered the moors of his father's parish in Zundert, a little village in the south of Holland.
Zundert, I can see again the radiant blue sky with the white clouds in it. Every path, the views of the fields outside, the church, the graveyard.
Yes, especially the graveyard. For when as a child he passed these monuments on his way to church, he looked down upon this grave bearing his own name. The grave of his elder brother, stillborn a year before himself. The same day of the same month, March 30th. And because of his parents' grief, the living Vincent, all during his early years, lived in the shadow of the dead Vincent beneath this tombstone. It was here in England, as a young man in pursuit of the love of God, that Vincent, at Ilsworth up the Thames, took his place in this church. And as he ecstatically wrote his brother Theo,
Theo, your brother preached for the first time last Sunday. Let us not forget that we are strangers on earth, but we have a God and Father who preserveth strangers, and that we are all brothers. Amen. When I was standing in the pulpit, Theo, I felt like somebody who, emerging from a dark cave underground, comes back to the friendly daylight.
in December of 1878, after a 3-month course at a school for evangelists in Belgium, Vincent set out along this road to the coal mining district of the Borinage on probation as a lay minister. From this point on, Vincent's letters among the most remarkable in history. His letters to the one person on earth to whom he felt close, his younger brother Theo, who was commencing a career as an art dealer in Paris. These letters are Vincent's only bridge with life as normal men knew it.
Dear Theo, here in the Borinage, life goes on underground instead of above. Oh, one might live here for years and never know the real state of things unless one went down into the mines. I should like to make rough sketches of the things I meet on the way, but it would probably keep me from my real work.
In such a setting, Vincent plunged wholeheartedly to work, and soon the whole district buzzed with his extraordinary behavior. He gave up his warm room. He moved to a hut meaner than the miners, and amid the ash heaps lived on scraps as he nursed the sick and comforted the lowly. These reflections were made later, after he was dismissed by the Missionary Society for carelessness in dress and bearing, want of dignity.
Theo, it is not merely the question of dress. It is a much more serious question, I assure you. It is simply that I have different ideas.
It is here to the village of Queen that Vincent finally came after his dismissal.
I'm not made of stone or iron, like a hydrant or a lamppost. To improve my life, don't you think I'm eager to? But I'm more afraid of remedies. Your advice to become an engraver of visiting cards or a bookkeeper or a carpenter's apprentice. Perhaps it is only a terrible nightmare. With or without our permission, the wind turns and we have a thaw. I still have some hope of a change for the better.
Thereafter, 9 months of silence. And then...
July 1880. My dear Theo, as molting time, when they change their feathers, is for birds, so adversity or misfortune is a difficult time for us human beings. One can stay in it or one can emerge renewed. But anyhow, it must not be done in public. A caged bird knocks his head against the bars of the cage, but the cage remains and the bird is maddened by anguish. Look at that lazy animal, says another bird in passing. He has everything he wants. I am caged, and you tell me I do not want for anything. Fools, I beseech you, liberty, that I may be a bird like other birds. A certain idle man resembles this idle bird. Do you know what frees one from this activity? It is every deep, serious affection, being friends, being brothers. Love, that is what opens the prison door. But I must continue on the path I have taken now. In deep misery, I said to myself, I will take up my pencil and I will go on with my drawing. From that moment, everything seemed transformed for me.
Thereafter, the two brothers were as one single human being. Here to Brussels comes Vincent van Gogh, struggling to teach himself drawing like a man possessed.
I am in a rage of work. My aim is to learn to make some drawings that are presentable and saleable. Now, there are laws of proportion, of light and shadow, of perspective, which one must know. I have been drawing all winter now. My chief food is dry bread and some potatoes or chestnuts, which people sell here on the street corners. The main thing for me is to draw. The cheapest way would perhaps be for me to spend the summer at Eton. I can find subjects enough there.
And so in the spring of 1881, Vincent arrives at Eton, his family's new home, his father's new church.
What a job it is to make people understand how to pose. They only want to pose in their Sunday best. I have learned to measure and to seek for broad lines. What seemed impossible before is gradually becoming possible now. Dear Theo, there is something I must tell you. A deep love has grown in my heart for Kay.
This is his cousin Kay, a widow and her child, who visited his family that summer. Kay, who replied to his proposal of marriage, no, never, never.
I look upon that no, never, never as a block of ice which I press to my heart to thaw.
And though he pursued her to her home in Amsterdam, asking to speak to her only as long as he could hold his hand in the flame of an oil lamp, and so doing until he faints from pain, all was to no avail. Convinced at last, resigned, Vincent leaves for The Hague to study with his noted painter cousin, Mauve. And there...
Theo, I found a woman. Not young, not beautiful. She doesn't have a lady's hands like Kay. A pregnant woman who had to walk the streets in winter to earn her bread. You understand how. I took this woman for a model. So far, I've been able to protect her and her child from hunger and cold. I cannot, I may not, I will not live without love. I am a man, and a man with passions. I must have a woman.
Here in The Hague, Vincent struggles on, living with and drawing the girl he called Scene, his own.
Today I mail you a drawing to show my gratitude for all you have done for me. In my opinion, it is the best figure I have drawn yet. I want to do drawings that touch people, so that people will say of my work, he feels deeply, he feels tenderly. What am I in people's eyes? A nonentity or an eccentric and disagreeable man? Somebody who has no position in society, the lowest of the low. I want my work to show what is in the heart of such an eccentric, of such a nobody. This is my ambition.
And it was here that color came into the life of him who was to become one of the greatest colorists of all time.
Theo, just think, I have been struggling for years, and now comes a dawn of real light. Theo, I sit down with a whiteboard before the spot that strikes me. I say to myself that that whiteboard must become something. I find that nature has spoken to me. It will be a hard pull for me. The tide rises high, almost to the lips, perhaps higher still. But I will sell my life dearly. I have been in bed 3 days with headache and toothache. Well, my youth is gone. After all, there are much better things, but sometimes, like now, it is hell. I should be very pleased if you had in your wardrobe a discarded coat or a pair of trousers to fit me. Theo, you know what difficulties I had with the woman when I wrote you last. Her family tried to draw her from me. My spirits are low. I have no real friend but you. You must try to come soon, brother.
When Theo at last arrives, he finds that Vincent has left his teacher, Mauve.
He said I had to draw from casts. I smashed those plaster casts to pieces. I will draw from casts when there are no hands and feet of living beings to draw from. I should love to go to Drenthe, that country of heath and moorland.
And so he does, leaving the woman, leaving The Hague, drawing the burden of his past behind him. Vincent van Gogh, after months of wandering, returns to his only possible refuge, the home of his parents, now here in Noonan.
Theo, I feel that father and mother feel the same dread of taking me in the house as they would about taking a big, rough dog. He'll be in everybody's way, and he barks so loud.
It was a dismal February morning in 1888, eager for a cloudless sky, eager to see a brilliant sun, eager to establish his studio of the future, waited alone at the Gare de Lyon for a southbound train. He sits by the window, and as the train moves out, faces, without realizing it, his hardest and greatest days. He has 2.5 years to live.
I always remember the emotions which the trip from Paris to Arles evoked. How I kept watching to see if I had already reached Japan. Childish, isn't it?
And so Vincent came at last to the town of Arles. Once settled, not far from town, over a canal of the Rhone, a bridge reminds him of his native Holland. But soon these almond trees begin to flower, and he falls completely under their spell.
I'm using up a tremendous lot of colors and canvases. My brush stroke has no system at all. I hit the canvas with irregular touches of the brush, which I leave as they are. I must warn you, everyone will think I work too fast. You can reply that they looked at it too quickly. Oh, I shall be all in when the orchards are over.
Often, while all in, he would return to his cafe and sit outside over a cup of coffee, and sometimes see a face he liked sitting close by and get its owner to exchange the cafe chair for this one in his studio, recently found again. La Mousme, for instance.
A mousme is a Japanese girl, Provençal in this case, 12 to 14 years old. It took me a whole week. That makes 2 portraits, her and the Zouave, a boy with a small face, a bull neck, and the eye of a tiger.
And he painted still another Zouave, one who became a good friend of his, Second Lieutenant Millier.
I give him drawing lessons, and he is beginning to make drawings. By God, I've seen worse.
Together they walked the countryside, climbed the stony crags of Montmajour. Not only climbed, but sketched them. And from this height, they could look out over the checkered plain below.
The fascination these huge plains have for me is very strong. The flat landscape is as infinite as the sea. My dear Theo, I am at last writing to you from Saint-Marie. The Mediterranean has the colors of mackerel, changeable, I mean. On the flat, sandy beach, little boats, so pretty in shape and color that they make one think of flowers.
Back in Arles, among postmen such as this, Vincent made a real friend, Postman Roulin.
His wife had just had a child, and the fellow was aglow with satisfaction. A Socratic type, nonetheless Socratic for being somewhat addicted to liquor and having a high color as a result. I painted the wife in such a way that a sailor at sea would imagine when he thinks of his wife ashore.
He never forgot his dream of a community of artists and of the man to head it.
What is Gauguin going to do? Up to now, loneliness has not worried me much because I have found the brighter sun and its effect on nature so absorbing. My whole mind is set on Gauguin.
He set up his easel under a gas jet to record the magic of starry nights.
Looking at the stars always makes me dream, as simply as I dream over the black dots representing towns and villages on a map.
Stand for a moment, if you will, here in the Place de Forum of Arles today. You're looking at the place where Van Gogh's home stood until it was obliterated by a bomb in World War II. This is how it looked then.
I have just rented a 4-room house here in Arles. I want to make it really an artist's house. The house on the left is pink with green shutters. That is the restaurant where I go for dinner every day.
Suddenly, unexpectedly, Theo sells a painting of Gauguin's, making it possible for him to come.
Now that I hope to live with Gauguin in a studio of our own, I am painting with the enthusiasm of a Marseillais eating bouillabaisse. Big sunflowers for decoration. I want nothing but big flowers. I have also done a canvas of my bedroom. I wanted to express an absolute restfulness, looking at the picture or to rest the brain. My portrait, which I am sending to Gauguin, is all ash-colored. I've tried to convey not only myself, but an impressionist in general. A simple bonze worshiping the eternal Buddha. Only I've made the eyes slightly slanting, like the Japanese. Oh, my whole mind is set on Gauguin now.
Early in the morning of the 20th of October, 1888, Paul Gauguin rapped on the door of the Yellow House. Vincent wired his brother.
Gauguin has arrived in good health.
They walked through the little town to familiarize Gauguin with it and Vincent with him.
He is very interesting as a man. I'm sure we'll do loads of things. Gauguin and I are going to have our dinner at home today. I must tell you, he knows how to cook perfectly.
In time, they paused here to paint Les Alicants. As time went on, occasionally, if their budget permitted it, they visited the brothels together. And Vincent observed his attitude slowly changing.
With Gauguin, blood and sex prevail over ambition. Our arguments are very electric. Sometimes we come out of them with our heads as exhausted as a used electric battery.
His thoughts returned to his mother in the garden of his home in Eton. He wrote again of the growing strain between Gauguin and himself.
I think myself that Gauguin is a little out of sorts with the good town of Arles, the little yellow house, and especially with me.
As Vincent awaited Gauguin's decision to stay or to leave destroying all he dreamt of, Gauguin painted him at work. Vincent's curious comment.
It is certainly I, but I gone mad.
He in turn painted the chairs they used. His, Gauguin's, admitting later the foreboding in his heart.
I tried to paint his empty place.
Thus, what seemed bound to happen happened Christmas Eve on a dark street like this, according to Gauguin's memoirs written 15 years later. While on a stroll after dinner, he heard a step behind and turned to discover Vincent about to leap upon him with an open razor. Withering him with a word and a look, he sent Vincent on home and himself thought it best to stay that night in a hotel. Vincent, it is said, alone, assailed by hallucinations, cut off the lobe of his ear. And then, as the local newspaper reported it next day, last Sunday night at 11:30, a painter named Vincent van Gogh, a native of Holland, appeared at number 1, asked for a girl named Rachel, and handed her his ear with these words, "Keep this object carefully." The police, informed of these happenings, attributed them to an unfortunate maniac. Next morning, in the bedroom he painted to symbolize peacefulness, Gauguin and the police found Vincent almost dead from loss of blood. Gauguin left word that he had departed for Paris, and while they took Vincent to the hospital, telegraphed Theo to come at once to the Yellow House. The hospital is still there in Arles, where for 3 long days Vincent van Gogh lay unconscious, under the care of Dr. Ray, whom he painted thus later. Afterwards, looking into his mirror with palette in hand again,
I have no illusions about myself anymore. I shall do everything the doctor says. But as for considering myself completely sane, we must not do it.
he was taken back to the hospital again, and ultimately, upon a petition of his neighbors, confined to this cell.
My dear brother, I write you not as a madman, but as the brother you know. Here I am, shut up in a cell, under lock and key, and with keepers. What a staggering blow to find so many people cowardly enough to join against one man, and that man ill.
Realizing his inability to look after himself any longer, he voluntarily seeks admission to a sanitarium at nearby Saint-Rémy and is accepted. This is Saint-Rémy. Saint-Rémy, whose nuns accepted Vincent as a strange patient.
I think I have done well to come here. What matters is that one should learn to want to go on living. I have a little room. Through the iron-barred window, I see a square field of wheat in an enclosure, above which I see the morning sun rise in all its glory. The poor souls here do absolutely nothing, not a book, nothing to distract them. If someone has an attack, the others look after him. I take the baths twice a week now, stay in for 2 hours.
After a month, Vincent was permitted to work beyond the garden of the asylum, a guard accompanying him.
The cypresses are always occupying my thoughts. It astonishes me that they have not been done as I see them.
But peace was not long with him. One day, on a trip to paint a nearby quarry, after securing his easel amid the rocks to support it against the wind, as he began to work on his painting,
a new attack came on me in the fields while I was painting. But I finished in spite of it.
It was a long, tortured way from the quarry to his cell. For 6 weeks, Vincent did not dare leave the room. He painted what he could see from his window.
I see in this reaper the image of death, in the sense that humanity might be the wheat he is reaping. Do you know what I think? It is the same with people as with wheat. In the end, you are ground between millstones to become bread.
Then again, suddenly, unexpectedly,
we can do nothing. I almost give up all hope, abandon it altogether.
But the days of blackout give way before the spring to a kind of tranquility. And during that lull, he makes the difficult decision to leave Saint-Rémy.
My surroundings are beginning to weigh on me. I have been here more than a year. I must make a change.
He rejects firmly the suggestion that he be accompanied.
I've tried to be patient. I've done no one any harm. Is it fair to be accompanied like a dangerous beast?
In his office, the director of the hospital closes his records on Vincent van Gogh. May 16th, 1890. The patient has had several attacks during his stay. He was subjected to frightful terrors and tried several times to poison himself. In between, the patient was quiet and devoted to his painting. Today, he is asking for his release. Observations: cured. Vincent van Gogh has 2.5 months to live. And so he comes to the last summer of his life. Here in Auvers, not far from Paris, placed by Theo under the friendly eye of Dr. Paul Ferdinand Gachet, an amateur artist.
I have seen Dr. Gachet, who gives me the impression of being rather eccentric. He certainly seems to be suffering at least as seriously as I. He piloted me to an inn where they ask 6 francs a day. All by myself, I found one where I shall pay 3.50 a day. Auvers is beautiful. Dr. Gachet says I must work boldly on and not think of what went wrong with me.
He looks at this church again and paints it. He poses the 16-year-old daughter of his innkeeper, Ravu, who, discovered still living today in Dieppe, once again took the pose she took for him 70 years ago. He turns to these wheat fields after a sudden anguished trip to Paris upon news that Theo is beset with troubles, his child ill, his wife worried.
In these vast fields of wheat under troubled skies, I did not need to go out of my way to express sadness and extreme loneliness. They will tell you what I cannot say in words.
And then one day, on the 27th of July, 1890, Vincent van Gogh sat down in this room and wrote his last letter. Somewhere he found or borrowed a gun. Rising, he left Ravu's cafe. Walking through the Sunday empty streets of Auvers, walking toward the fields he loved, walking, his unmailed last letter in his pocket.
My dear brother, there are many things I should like to write you about, but I feel it is useless. I tell you again that I shall always consider you to be something more than a simple dealer in coraux, that through my mediation you have your part in the actual production of some canvases which will retain their calm, even in catastrophe. Well, my own work, I am risking my life for it, and my reason has half floundered because of it. That's all right. But what's the use?
The bullet entered his body somewhere below the heart. And as the sun he so loved rushed, as if it did not wish to look upon the scene, quickly below the horizon, painfully he picked himself up from the ground. He placed his hands over his wound and staggered, falling time and again toward home. Reaching the inn, he entered the dining room and crossed it, speaking to no one. He mounted these stairs. entered this room and threw himself on his bed. Perhaps his groans summoned the innkeeper, Ravu. When he entered the room and saw what he saw and heard Vincent say,
I tried to kill myself, but missed.
Ravu rushed to call Dr. Gachet, who hastily arrived with his 17-year-old son. This man, one of the two last surviving persons to see Van Gogh alive. Monsieur Gachet still lives there in Auvers, writing his memories of Vincent van Gogh. He remembers much. He remembers how his father examined the wound, how extraction seemed impossible, how he dressed it, how he left him on guard as he hastened to send word to Theo in Paris. Remembers Theo next day, sobbing as he entered the room, and Vincent saying,
"Do not cry. I did it for the good of everybody."
Remembers how later his father made this sketch of Vincent on his deathbed. All day long, Theo sat with his brother, who to him seemed determined not to recover. At 1:30 a.m. on July 29th, 1890, at the age of 37 years and 4 months, after he spoke these words,
"I wish I could go home now."
life left Vincent van Gogh.
Is the whole of life visible to us? Why shouldn't the shining dots of the sky be as accessible as the black dots on the map of France? Just as we take the train to get to Rouen, we take death to reach a star. Are we not entitled to hope that there may possibly be other and better conditions for painting than here on Earth?
It was described as an afternoon like this, the 3 o'clock of the next day, when his coffin, which throughout the morning had been covered by yellow flowers, his favorite color, and surrounded by his paintings, entered this cemetery. Following in the heat his friends from Paris, Pizarro, Bernard, Tanguy, and of course Gachet and Theo. Some 800 paintings and 800 drawings since he began as an artist 10 years before, selling only one in his lifetime, and that for a trifling sum. His friends delivered him to the waiting ground to find the peace he was unable to find here on Earth. Less than 6 months after, Theo, unable to survive the shock, sick and sense-shattered, followed him to the grave and was moved some years later, here, that the brothers might be united in death as they were in life. Thus ends the story of Vincent van Gogh, painter, who gave the world that scorned him a priceless heritage of beauty because he lived what he believed.
Man is not on this earth merely to be happy. He is there to realize great things for humanity. Man is not on this earth merely to be happy, nor even to be simply honest. He is there to realize great things for humanity, to attain nobility. and to surmount the vulgarity in which the existence of all individuals drags on.
So wrote one of the most extraordinary geniuses the centuries have ever known, Vincent van Gogh, whose eyes gave humanity a new vision of the world. On this, the 80th anniversary of his first paintings, thanks to the cooperation of his nephew and individuals and museums throughout Europe and America, NBC News, having retraced the fabric of Van Gogh's life on the scene in Holland, England, Belgium, and France, now in Van Gogh's own words, and through his drawings and canvases filmed from the originals, many of them for the first time in color, is enabled to bring you his inspiring self-portraits.